back to another episode of Real Results with Coach Joe. I'm your host, Joe Villegas. This is the program where we help you to improve your health, increase your wealth, and live a more fulfilling life. And I could not be more excited today for our guest. He is an entrepreneur, philanthropist, adventurer. He is the creator of the Elite Mentorship Forum, which is a program that had a profound impact on my life. And he's also the author of the Inside Track, the Amazon #1 bestseller. He's a coach, he's a mentor, he's a friend. I'd like to welcome to the show, Peter Sage. Pete, so pumped to have you here.
Joe, it's an absolute pleasure. When I got the invite, I was so excited to be able to see you in your element and how many people you're helping, and it's a real joy to be here and witness that, my friend.
I appreciate that. Thank you so much. I know we don't have all day, unfortunately. We only have a 30-minute segment, so I want to squeeze as much out of this as humanly possible because I got you all to myself for that time. So we're going to jump right into it. There are some pieces from your teachings, Pete, that I learned that had a really, really big impact on my life, and there are things I want to share with the viewers right from the source. And I want to start with how folks can begin to create lasting change in their life. All too often, folks, they'll lose 10 pounds, 20 pounds, 30 pounds only to gain it back and then some, right? Or they might make a difference. They might stop smoking, but then they go back to it. What are some things folks can do today to start making that change and make it lasting for a lifetime? Let's just begin there and we'll roll with that.
Great question. And you're absolutely right. So many people are chasing temporary results and thinking that that's the win. And so, you've got enough motivation to hit a short-term goal, and after that, there's no more motivation, so you slip back into the same habits, behaviors, rinse and repeat cycle. We've seen it too many times.
Right.
And that's the difference between somebody that is looking to make a shift. Yeah, I want to go from A to B, right? Versus somebody who becomes a person who is at B.
Right.
Yeah, so if you have a situation whereby you start to recognize that it is the unconscious patterns of behavior that sabotages, not the conscious ones. Nobody wakes up and says, I want to screw up my life today. How can I undo all the great work I did last month?
Right.
That's not a conversation many people have.
Right.
So if we realize that that isn't a conscious intent, why is it a manifested behavior? Well, that's because behavior doesn't follow intent. Behavior follows unconscious programming linked to a very powerful source, and that source is your identity.
Right. And
so psychologists talk about it for years. They talk about something known as cognitive dissonance, which is a fancy term for if you act out of accordance with how you see yourself, you will have an unconscious magnet pulling you back into how you see yourself.
Right.
So if you quit smoking, but you have an identity as a smoker, right, or I'm a smoker who's quit, which is basically a temporary non-smoker, right, because you're still a smoker. You just happen to have set that goal for 30 days to quit, right, or however, but yeah, your identity is I'm a smoker. Right. Willpower's going to run out. And therefore, you will then fall back into a behavior in alignment with your identity. Right. It's like try to stop a gym junkie from going to the gym. You can't. Why? Because they're a gym junkie.
Right.
Right. Try to get a neat freak to mess up their desk for long. If it's messy for more than an hour, they freak out. Right.
That happens.
You get somebody who's not a neat freak. They don't see themselves that way. They don't care. They live in the chaos. Their house is a chaos.
Right.
So if you can make shifts of identity instead of behavior, or you can ask questions, what is it about my current behavior that is being driven by identity that is not conclusive or conducive to who I want to be?
Right.
Now we get into the frame of not asking, what do I need to do to change? Mm-hmm. Instead, you start asking the question, who do I need to become in order for that change to be natural?
Right. And so, Peter, would you say like those questions are probably the best place to begin? Like, how do we really begin to make that identity shift? We identify who we want to be, start asking those kind of critical questions you just said. What more can we be doing to really kind of make that shift and make it stick?
Yeah, questions are the steering wheel of the mind. Most people are on autopilot thinking that their model of the world is the only model of the world, and therefore they never question. They're always looking to change the outer world. You could flip it into a relationship example, which would make it quite easy. People say, I can never find the right person. Well, and my question to them is, who do you need to become that your ideal person would most want to be with? Now you shift the telescope. to look at it from the other side.
Right.
Yeah, I'm off to do a crazy race next year where I'm going to be rowing the Atlantic. Right now, I know that I'm not focused on what do I need to do to go do that.
Right.
There's a ton of stuff I need to do, but it's secondary to the best question I need to ask. Who do I need to become as the person who shows up to row the Atlantic?
Right.
So now I'm asking better questions, not what should my training schedule be, what's my diet. That's almost like that's detail that'll follow.
Right.
But who do I need to become to be able to have the conversation so that when it's 2 a.m. and the swell's up at 3 meters and I haven't slept for 24 hours and I'm seasick and I've got to go out and row for 2 hours backwards in the dark with salt blisters on my hand, who's that guy that turns around and says, I'm doing it anyway?
Yep.
That's the guy I need to become at that level.
Yes.
Now, I wouldn't invite many people to go do that because you've got to be crazy. Right? But for me, rowing the Atlantic, for somebody else, that could be having the conversation where they finally admit that they're wrong.
Right.
For somebody else, that could be their first 5-kilometer race. For somebody else, it could be having the courage to leave a relationship which no longer serves you, but have the courage to go find one where somebody values you rather than takes you for granted.
Yes.
So who do you need to become to be that person? Because if you were that person now, you wouldn't be asking the question.
Right. Right. I mean, it's such an amazing sort of reframe, right? Where most folks are just focused on, like you said, the outer world, when in reality, the door opens inward. Just open the door inward, look inward at yourself and ask those critical questions. And it's amazing. When I started doing that, the answers begin to present themselves. The opportunities begin to pop up and present themselves. And before you know it, you might even be beyond, where that new identity is going to take you or where you ever thought possible. So I think that's an amazing place for folks to start. And Peter, would you agree that a lot of maybe like self-sabotage and things that folks are experiencing currently really is that sort of incongruency in their current identity and where they want to go? Would you say that's usually the case?
It's where self-sabotage comes from, it's where the glass ceiling comes from, and it links to the primary fear we have as human beings a lot of the time, which is the fear we won't be enough. Because if you look at self-sabotage, there's several aspects to it. It's kind of procrastination is an early warning sign of self-sabotage, right? And why do people procrastinate? Everybody does. Why? I'll tell you why they don't do it. Just the answer most people are running east looking for their sunset, trying to figure out.
Right.
And that is that it's not down to a lack of motivation. Everybody tries to cure procrastination with motivation.
Right.
Yeah, and you hear it a lot. It's like, if your why is big enough, the how gets easier. And while that has an element of truth for certain things, the predominant aspect that stops people when it comes to procrastination is they don't understand what it actually is.
Right.
Because it's not a lack of knowledge. See, if you're not doing something because you don't know how to do it, that's different.
Right.
But procrastination is quite often you're not doing something that you know how to do that you know you should do. So what's going on? Let's peel back the onion. Well, imagine you've got 2 corridors, and if you open the door to one of those corridors and you go to the end, and if you open the door at the end of that corridor and it's not a nice feeling. On the other corridor, you open the door and you take the action to walk down that corridor and you open the door and it is a nice feeling. So let's put that in the context of how I'm trying to give the example. If you say, I need to write my business plan, I need to sit down and make some phone calls to progress this deal, and you're procrastinating, it's because your mind has already gone down the corridor, opened the door, and says, if this doesn't work, if I fail, if I get rejected, if the business doesn't do well anyway, that's not very nice. Right. So I'd rather not open the door. I'd rather open the door to a corridor that I know that I'm going to feel good at the end of, which is, cleaning out my cupboard, doing something easy, ticking off the easiest 3 things on my to-do list so I can have the illusion that I'm being productive instead of just active.
Right.
So it's almost a protection mechanism to avoid the fear of failure or rejection or the fact you're not good enough. Yeah. And when we realize that, we start to, instead of trying to treat it with motivation, that just means that you're willing to open the door. You're still only going to get halfway down the corridor before you get distracted on a different, easier door to open.
Right.
Instead, what we do is we surrender the fear of failure at the end by looking at it in closer detail. Yes. The paradox of fear is the more you look at it under a microscope, the smaller it gets,
yes.
not the bigger it gets. So what am I really afraid of? Well, they might say no. Yeah, which means what? Oh, they're not going to kidnap my children.
Right.
Yeah, I'm not going to go bankrupt.
Right.
It means I've found a way to go to the next client.
Yes.
Oh, if I do the business plan and it's a flop, then what? If I get up to sing at karaoke and I sound like a strangled cat, well, what's the worst that can frickin' happen?
Right.
Right? Okay, I have some fun.
Yeah.
Right? Or I learn a valuable lesson. My failures are my capital. Yeah, I've had multi-million-dollar failures, many of them, and they are my most treasured possessions because I paid a lot of money for those lessons.
Right.
But if you're like, oh, I didn't fail. If I turn around to you, Joe, or so you turn around to a client and said, hey, the third business you start will set you financially successful for life. The first two are going to wipe you out.
Right.
Right? And that's just, I've looked at the crystal ball, that's the deal.
Right.
You can say, well, I'm going to be in poverty for my life then. Because I'm not going to go through 2 business failures to get to financial freedom.
Right.
No. Yeah, the third girl you ask out is going to be your dream supermodel, like best soulmate forever. But the first 2 are going to blow you off and saying, stop punching above your weight.
Right.
Right? And you can say, well, I'm not going to face 2 rejections to get to my dream relationship. I'm going to be single and lonely for life. No. You're like, how fast can I get through those 2 no's so that I can start living the life I want?
Yes.
The challenge is most people don't know how many no's there are, so they'd rather not start playing the game.
Right.
They don't realize that, if you act as if it's impossible to fail, you won't.
Right. Yeah, and Peter, you have an analogy you used in one of your straight talks, which when I heard this, I felt like I started seeing the world in color. Like once I heard this, it's the chessboard analogy, right? Where there's white squares, black squares, and you're going to tell it a lot better than I can. But I would love if you could share it on the show here of what life is like. Like once that chessboard's covered, you have to take that step. You have to swing the bat. Would you mind kind of sharing that analogy a little bit and do it some justice? Because I'm not right now.
No, love to, and I'll drill down a little as well to try to help add some more value to it. So, the analogy I give is that if life, your journey through life is like a journey across the chessboard, and how most people hold the game. They're trying to win the game, and to them, winning the game is stepping only on white squares, which they perceive to be positive things, and avoiding the dark squares, which they perceive to be negative things.
Yes.
So, and one of the reasons for that is because the level of emotional maturity most people have been conditioned to actually acquire is that they believe life is a comfort-centric experience.
Yes.
And when they wake up to the fact that one of the greatest days of a human being's existence on this planet is the day they realize that life is a growth-centric experience, not a comfort-centric experience.
100%.
Because the paradox is the more comfortable you are for the longer, the more painful it's going to be, right? Oh, but I'm comfortable sitting on the couch eating ice cream. Well, yeah, good luck with having a quality of life without being pre-diabetic. Right? Oh, it's uncomfortable going to the gym. But hey, once you get there, it's like, now I'm fitter, stronger, my comfort zone's expanded.
Yes.
But if you're standing there at a chessboard and you're like, right, my goal here is only to step on white squares. Right? I want to avoid bad things happening. I don't want any bad luck to happen to me. And so you're just looking for the white squares. You're designing your life around that. Avoid the dark squares. And just before you take your first step, somebody covers the board in a sheet, and you can't see where the squares are.
Right.
Damn, who said life was fair? Now, you know that underneath that sheet, there's a 50-50 chance of stepping on a white square or a dark square. The chances of only stepping on light squares is 0. Chances of only stepping on dark squares is 0.
Yes.
To get across that board, you're pretty much going to have an even keel of 50-50 throughout your life. You're going to have learning experiences, and you're going to have times where you're coasting.
Right.
So if you know that in advance, how does it change playing the game? If you know that every second decision you make is not going to be the perfect decision, what happens to perfectionism? But if you want to understand what perfectionism really is, right, I'll give you the real name. It's called scared of screwing up ism. Right? But if you know that in advance, life becomes an adventure. Life becomes a game where it's like, wow, I'm on an Easter egg hunt here, and some of the baskets I look in aren't going to have any eggs. I'm okay with that.
Right.
Because I'm going to find eggs somewhere. I can't go across the whole board with no eggs. Right? Pete says there's 0 chance. Right? So when I don't find eggs, am I going to bitch about it? No, I know that there's a place where I haven't found X, so I'm going to look somewhere else. Exactly. I know there's a place where my business idea didn't work. Great. What am I going to learn from that? To go look into a different basket.
Exactly.
And now this whole game that most people are saying, oh my God, I'm so scared in case I step on a dark square. You have a different relationship to the game.
Right.
And that's a whole different way of being able to have a relationship to life.
Yes. Yeah, and Peter, I love that, and I know like the viewers, if they're watching this right now, are getting a ton of value out of that analogy, and I think it's a great place for us to take a pause. We have some messages from our sponsors coming up here. When we come back, Peter's going to be sharing even more of his wonderful insights to help us make the most of our time here on this planet. So thank you, Pete. We will see you all back in just a moment. Hey, it's Coach Joe here, and I want to thank you for checking out this episode of Real Results. Since becoming a coach over a decade ago and getting to help tons of people make incredible transformations, I've made it my mission to find the most effective tools to help people change their health and ultimately their life. As a thank you for watching this episode, I've created a series of free mini courses, downloads, and resources that you can use to create real change in your life. Simply click the link in the description or head over to www.resultswithjoe.com and click on the free resources tab. All you have to do is sign up using your best email address, and you'll have access to all the resources straight away so you can start to create real change in your life. I look forward to seeing you on the inside, and let's enjoy the rest of this episode. Welcome back to Real Results, and with me again today, I've got the one and only Peter Sage. And Peter, you were just going through, like that first chunk of this episode, people could sit there for probably days going through all the golden nuggets that are in there. I do want to shift gears a bit and talk more about the inner work. So we talked about how people can shift their identity, they can begin to really create, not just real results, but lasting real results in their life. Let's talk a little bit more about the metaphysical, this side of things where folks can tap into the quantum field. I know for folks watching, they might think it's a little woo-woo, but I can tell you firsthand from doing this work myself, this is for real. Like, this is the real stuff, and this is where we can take that adventure that life becomes that we just talked about and make it even that much more exciting. So Pete, I'm gonna give you the stage. Let's just take it away and talk about doing some of that inner work.
I'll try to be as concise as I can. The first real aspect is to understand that there is a difference between the outer world and the inner world.
Yes.
And both are as real. And yes. This isn't Pete saying it. Let's go to one of the smartest men that we know of, Albert Einstein.
Yes.
He said the sole governing agency of the particle is the field. He didn't say the sole governing agency of the field is the particle. In other words, the non-physical gives birth to the physical.
Yes.
Right? Yeah, and as a human being, we are the perfect encapsulation as to the physical and non-physical in one. We have a physical body. We experience physical matter reality. But what the essence of makes us is non-physical.
Right.
It's our hopes, dreams, personalities. It's our ideas, our vision, our values. All of that you can't put in a bag and sell in Walmart. Right? And so there is a non-physical aspect to this existence that we are intimately familiar with. Now, we know that the outer world runs on a rule set, predominantly governed by our major three physical sciences: physics, chemistry, biology. Physics dealing with particles, chemistry dealing with molecules, biology dealing with cells. But the non-physical also runs on a rule set.
Right.
And when you understand that, you can start to apply it. I mean, imagine you never knew the relationship between diet and a body shape.
Right.
Right? Just say you just didn't know. You didn't know there was a link between what you ate and how big your waistline got.
Right.
You'd be like, oh my God, look, I'm putting on all this weight. I don't know how to got to buy new sets of pants. Give me another double cheeseburger, right? It's like, we know that there's rules in the physical that if you eat too many double cheeseburgers, you're going to need bigger pants.
Right.
No one bats an eyelid at that.
Right.
But the non-physical rules, we understand that in order to influence circumstantial reality creation, outer world impact, we have to shift our inner world, not our outer world. If you're focusing on trying to bend the outer world into shape, good luck. But how do you do that? The easiest, fastest way is a clarity of intention with an elevated emotion.
Yes.
Now, when I say an elevated emotion, I'm talking about a high frequency emotion.
Yes.
Something that you can be grateful for in advance. This is where we starting to get into shift. People that are constantly battling life are battling because they are being seduced by their sense data.
Right.
Their outer world is leading their inner world.
Right.
People that join secret societies that have been around for centuries, that have produced some of the richest people in the world, the most powerful people in the world, they make no secret of the fact that they exist. What's secret is what is taught. And what is taught in the secret societies, be it the Brotherhood, the Freemasons, the Skull and Bones, whatever it may be, are all the rules of the non-physical. We've known this for centuries, and their mandate, as many people are aware, is how do we disempower the masses? Well, keep them focused in the outer world. Easiest way to do that is fear. Hence, we have the media the way it is today. But if you can align your heart and your mind, which means you are lit up, you have total congruency over something that you desire, not to prove that you're good enough. Oh, I finally need that $1 million so that my mom and dad will be proud of me. But something that you feel is part of your truth. I want $1 million because I can add value to the world. Yeah, I can retire all of my fear and go give my family a future they deserve. And that lights you up, not from fear, but from inspiration. And if that heart and mind are aligned and they're shaking hands and there's no doubt that it's what you want, if you can have that emotion and you can override your sense, then you can picture within yourself the feeling of what it's like to have it, not the feeling of what it's like to go get it. That's a distinction. You don't broadcast to the quantum field from, to where you want to go. You broadcast from where you want to arrive. And so if you go to Neville Goddard, one of the greatest mystics of the 20th century, he summed it up in a beautiful way. If you adopt the feeling of the wish fulfilled, it will show up. Now, hear what I said before. If you act as if it's impossible to fail, you won't. You become a self-fulfilling prophecy. In quantum physics, it ties in with what's known as the observer effect, how collapsing the wave function from the double slit experiment. We could go on for days to validate this at scientific levels. But you've experienced it before in many different ways. You probably just didn't understand. Just like one time you probably had too many cheeseburgers and you suddenly, the first thing you started to remind yourself was your pants got tight. It's like, the feedback is validating. So instead, if you can say, I'm going to walk around celebrating as if it's already happened. Your friends will think you're nuts. Well, let them live in their world. Because it has to catch up. The trap that throws people back under the bus is that they forget there is what we call a quantum to Newtonian transition point. Meaning that it takes time. You don't walk into a gym 30 pounds overweight and then walk out skinny because you've done a great workout. But you know if you keep working out, you will get the result. If you keep focusing on positive thoughts, feeling the wish fulfilled as if it's already happened, over time, your body will lose the weight. In this term, that will be your scarcity mentality, your bad luck, your rinse and repeat cycle, your victim mentality, your low level of consciousness. And over time, you will trim that inner body into a sculpted god or goddess that you actually were born as, and your outer world will transform. Focus on that rather than trying to wear baggy clothes to hide your body shape so you feel better about it temporarily in the mirror, which is what most people do. Oh, I'll go get another job to get more money. Oh, I'll go try this, try that. No. You shift your inner world, your outer world will follow. Your financial bank account will follow your emotional bank account. You put your emotional bank account up first, your financial bank account has to follow downstream. But if you're getting your emotional bank account following your finance, you are trapped in a negative cycle because you'll always feel bad because you don't have enough money. How's that?
Amazing. And I think it's a good spot for us to tie in the first half of this episode. We talked about this concept of identity. And we say in this half of the episode, you need to get yourself into a higher vibration, a higher frequency. We'll focus on that, like when you ask that critical question, who do I need to become? Who do I need to be in order to achieve this goal? Live from that. Live through the eyes of that person. Become that person. And this is what you're saying, is living from the wish fulfilled. If you're living through that identity, that higher vibration, the outer world has to conform to that at some point, You are living from that place. And so I think that's a great message for us to give the viewers today, is you can take what Peter shared in the first half of this episode, combine it with sort of the outlook, we'll say, mindset, whatever, the frame of this second part, and you can begin to experience not only this adventure in your life, but really see the magic that the world has to offer you, the universe has to offer you. And it's a very special experience, and I've seen it firsthand myself. I can attest to that, time and time again after, kind of learning this work and putting in the work for sure. So Peter, I know we're kind of...
Let me wrap up and make it practical for these people, right? Because if it's open-ended, you've got to trust the universe, and most people don't have the references.
Sure.
Give it 7 days, where 7 days you can pretend that what you want has already happened, right? And what you're noticing over those 7 days is you're looking for positive confirmation. You're looking to amass evidence. And tell yourself, this is the game. If I see a shift, a coincidence, a synchronicity, something starts to shift, a problem solves itself, an opportunity presents itself. Right. In those 7 days, I'll extend the game by 2 days. If you do that, the game will never end. Play it that way.
Right. I love that. I love that. We'll call it the 7-day challenge, right? You can go do that. Or if you want to check out the 5-day challenge, we've got the Change Your Peer Group, Change Your Life challenge over at resultsjoe.com. But Peter, I cannot be more grateful and thankful for you coming on the show today, sharing your wisdom with us. I really know the viewers are going to get a ton out of it. So if anyone would like to check you out, learn more about you, check out your book, where can they find you?
If you want to copy the book, I'm giving it away just for shipping right now because I want to get it in a lot of people's hands. So, getpetesbook.com. Go there and grab a copy. It's changed the lives of pretty much everyone who's ever read the book, as I'm sure you can vouch.
Yep.
It's an amazing, probably the best work I've ever put into print. Other than that, I'm pretty much on YouTube, The Real Peter Sage, Instagram, or any social. You can follow me. I'm constantly giving out as much value as I can for those that need that. If you want to step up one of my programs, then that's available for when you're ready. But more than anything, just stay in the universe, and I'll do whatever I can to add some value, as you are doing as well, Joe.
Awesome. Well, Peter, thank you so much, brother. Appreciate your time. Appreciate you joining me, and we look forward to having you guys on the next episode of Real Results.